Alright guys, I'm back with another video. In the last video, we gave our Jet Bob the ability to be controlled remotely and by you, the network master. We also allowed you to join the game and spawn 2 different players. And in this next video, we're going to solve an issue that causes both of the players to teleport from one side of the screen to the other. So one particular problem we have in this is that both players think that they are player 1, and that causes us some issues. The issue being, this is our starting location 1 and this is our starting location 2, and when you guys both join, if you don't touch the buttons, you'll notice that 2 jets spawn, one there and one there, and it looks right. But as soon as you press up, if both players press up or left or right, you'll notice that both jets teleport to the player 1 location. What's happening is both players are being recognized as player 1. So we're going to update our code so that player 1 and player 2 are differentiated between one another. So let's get started. Alright, the first thing we're going to want to do is we're going to go and we're going to redo how we grab the player's ID. So right now we have a player 2 ID here. However, this is not really working out for us. So I'm going to go to my global script and I'm going to redo how we grab the player's ID. Instead of grabbing just player 2's ID, we are going to grab the host, or let's start off with the client's ID. So we'll say client ID, and then we're also going to give our client a name. So client name. And the starting name we're going to give is just a blank nothing. So empty, empty, empty. All right. So let me get rid of this comment here. All right, next, we're going to have a client and we're going to have a host. So I'm going to say var host ID is equal to -1, which is going to be basically our nothing, or we don't have an ID set yet. And we also need a host name. And I'll set my host name to empty as well. Okay, so we're going to have 2 players that connect. One's going to be the client and one is going to be the host. All right, let's go to our lobby scene. So here we go, lobby. Now, we're going to need to get a name from the player. So let's click on menu buttons and we need to add a place for the person to put their name. So I'm going to click add and I'm looking for line edit. And in this line edit, I want this to be the player name. Let's say player's name. Okay. We need to give them a hint, tell them what we want. So under placeholder, I'm going to say name here. And then I'm also going to set the alignment to center because that's what I like. And I don't want to put it at the bottom. I want to put mine at the top. So I'm going to move this up, move up, move up. Okay, now whenever I play this scene, I have 2 places, one for a name and one for an IP address. Perfect. All right, let's go back to our lobby scene. Now we're going to need to get access to this player name. So I'm going to say on ready var, and I need the player name that I just added there. So we're going to do get node, and the node we're going to get is player name. So the player's name is going to be put into that box there. And today we're not worried about errors that the person can make. We're going to worry about that in a later video. So we just want to we're going to assume that the person is going to give us their correct name. We're going to assume they're going to actually give us a name. So if the player presses the join button, who are they? Are they the client or the host? Well, they are actually the client. So what we're going to say is globals dot client name is equal to, and then I'm going to say player name dot text. So whatever the person puts into the player name, if they push join, it's going to set their name to player name, whatever they typed in there, and that's going to be the client name. Now we're going to do the exact same thing for the host button, except for the host is not the client, it is the host. So I'm going to say host name. Excellent. So we now, when they put a name in, if they click it, it's going to store their name, and it's going to store their name if they're the host or the client, or if they hit join or host. Now, when we get here, this is where our real issue was taking place, and this is where we're going to have to fix it. We're going to have to say if. So you click the button, you get both the names. Both people, both the host and the client hit. They go into this function, both of them. So if the code does not determine who's who, it's going to just give them both player 2 ID. So we need to decide who's who. So first, let's check for the host. So we'll say if globals dot host name is empty. If it's not equal to nothing, if it's not equal to anything, that must mean this is the host. So let's see if I can say that again, but more clearly. If the host name is not empty, this must be the host. So I'm going to say this must be the host. And if this is the host, the person who is connecting to the host is the client. So we're going to grab the client's ID and we're going to store it into that person's client ID spot. So then I'm going to say, let's do globals dot client ID is equal to ID. Store the client's ID. All right, so that's good. I'm going to get rid of this line here. We don't need this player 2 ID. We're done with that, so I'm removing it. Gone. All right. Now, the other case would be if you are not the host, then you must be the client. So I could just say else. I'm going to write an elif statement because I want to drive home a point here. So I'm going to say elif globals dot client name. If that one is not equal to empty, that must mean you are the client, and the person you're connecting to must be the host. So I'm going to say globals dot host ID is equal to ID. So hopefully that helps you understand what is happening in those two if statements right there, and how we're differentiating the people. So this must be the client. And in the next case, then we need to store the host's ID. All right, so only one of these two things happens here. So either the person is the host and the person who connected to them must be the client, or the person who connected is the client and the person they just connected to is the host. All right, so now we've got the correct IDs in the correct spot, and they both have names that whatever the people gave. All right, so let's go to our world scene, and we need to fix this code a little bit, because right now, whoever gets here, it automatically assumes that they are player 1. So I'm going to do a little bit of rearranging here on this code. I want to clean it up just a little bit. So I'm going to cut this, and I'm going to move it to the top. So I got both my variables at the top. And now I'm also going to start by actually checking to see who is on this page, because you know it's either the host or it's the client. Let's start off with the host again. So if globals dot host name, host name is not equal to empty. This must be the host. So what I'm going to put right here is this is the host. And if this is the host, we're going to make the host player 1. Let's just do that. We'll make player 1 the host. So player 1 is the host. So we're setting player 1, he's grabbing his unique ID, and he's going to set that as his name, and then he's also going to grab his unique ID, and he's going to set the make that his network master. He's the network master of that jet. Now, where the difference is going to come in is with this line right here. Player 2, I'm going to cut this, and I'm going to put it over here. And player 2, we're not using player 2's ID. We're using the client ID and client ID. Perfect. So player 2 is the client ID, and player 2 is the client ID again for the network master. Same deal. The only difference is we're going to have to do this for 2 different people. So this is the host connecting. He runs, or she, whoever, they run with this code, and then they're going to create the 2 jets. So I'm also going to organize this part here a little bit. So let me grab this one. I will do cut, and I'm putting these 2 next to each other because I think it looks a little bit better, maybe a little bit easier to understand. I don't know. So if this is the host, it's going to set the players 1 and player 2, and then it's going to set both their positions, 1 and 2, and then it's going to add players 1 and 2. Like so. All right, so we covered the case of the host name. I'm not going to force you to learn the logic again, so I'm just going to say else. So if you're not the host, then you must be the client. So I'm going to say this is the client. All right, now I need to set the next client. I need to set the client's username, or the jet. Give him control over the jet. Blah, blah, blah. All right, so I'm going to grab these 2 lines. It's going to be very similar to this. So I'm going to copy these 2. I'm going to paste them here. Now, we are not setting the client. So this is whoever's machine we're on currently. We're setting their unique ID. So I'm going to set player 2, unique ID. And it's going to give player 2 a jet name and give, I should change this to host and client. Give client, client's jet a name, and give client control of the jet of player 2. And then I'll do the same here. So this would be give host jet a name, give host control of player 1. And then this one would be give client jet a name, and then give client control of player 2. Okay, now we're going to go to this next part. So I'll grab this code here, copy, and I'm going to put it in this else statement, paste, and not player 2 this time. This is going to be player 1. And the major difference here is which ID do we use. Now remember that if you've made it into this section of code, you are the client. Therefore, you need to use the host ID and the host ID. And we are not giving the client control of a jet. We're giving the host. We're giving the host's jet a name, and we are giving the host control of player 1. Okay, now I know that can be rather confusing to wrap your head around, so I'm going to go over this one more time. Assume that you are the host. When you hit this script, whenever you get on this page, it's going to check and see, who are you? Oh, you're the host. So that means you are player 1. That's what this unique ID right here. You can only get that if you're on that computer. It's going to say, okay, I'm going to set your name to this. And so we give the host jet a name. And then we give the host control over player 1. And by token, by the opposite, we need to give the player 2 control to the client. And then we need to give the name to the client, and then we need to give him control over the jet. Okay, now you land on this page again, but this time you're the client. It's going to skip over this one, and it's going to go to this section, and it says player 2, we're going to set his name, and since he is on that page, we're going to grab his unique network ID, and he's going to be player 2, and then he's also going to have control over jet 2. And then by opposite, we need to give player 1, we want to use his host ID to set the name, and then we also want to use his host ID to control the jet as the network master. Now, after either one of them, after they complete those 2 lines of code, they're both going to go to set the player 1's position, set player 2's position, and put them into the world. Boom. We just did it. So we fixed that issue. I know that was a long bit of code to go through. I hope you take consideration to maybe watch this video a couple times, or if you understand it, that's good. Make sure you test this out, and I will see you guys in the next video. Have a great day.